Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ojeda, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. Alright, let's take a quick pause real quick. I want to give a quick disclaimer. The audio quality was a bit shoddy in this episode, as we have a very difficult conversation. Our guest wanted to go somewhere private to talk, and sometimes private areas are not necessarily the most quiet. So, with that said, it's a really good episode. Give it a listen. Let's get back to it. All right. Let's get this shit started. Thank you for listening to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed episode number 14 with Marissa Rascon. Quite the conversation there. I think we got a little bit heated when talking about these vultures and thieves that use the poor for their agendas. Still a great episode overall, though. Quick note. Got a lot of projects going on myself, and I wanted to plug my latest one, my venture into the barbecue world. If you're in the San Gabriel Valley area, that's in California, for those of you listening out there in Italy and the Philippines and all that stuff, and want to try some quality smoked meats, you're going to want to try Smokey O's Quality Q. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Just search Smokey, that's Smoky, O's, that's O''S, Quality Q, and that's Q spelled out with an apostrophe, C-U-E. Once again, that's Smokey O's Quality Q. Alright, moving on, we've got a bit of a different episode today. A lot of the time, our tone is very silly, light, and just, a lot of fun, a lot of comedy. But today I wanted to get a little more serious with the good story from someone brave enough to share it. I've known our guest for quite a while now, but when I recently heard her story, I knew it was something important, and with her permission, I knew there was something that I had to share with everybody. So that being said, she's a mother, a home business entrepreneur, and a survivor of abuse and trauma. Welcome to the podcast for episode number 15, Mary Eileen. Mary, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for agreeing to discuss your story with us. I know you shared it with me before, and it's definitely, something that's very touchy. And I mean, I'm glad you're able to share this with us and that you're comfortable doing so.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken time, of course, to get more comfortable with discussing it, but now I kind of feel like, I have a voice, and it's my responsibility to try to get other people to come forward and say their stories, because it happens so often, and so many times as a survivor of abuse, you're taught to not speak up,
right,
by whether it's family members or other people, because I've heard it before. I've had people tell me in the past, like, oh, you shouldn't talk about that, that's not something you should tell people. And that's something you don't want to hear when you're bearing your soul to somebody. It's very discouraging. Definitely.
And we'll get there in a bit, but before that, I definitely want to just kind of check in and, a couple things I do on the show, because it's very timely right now, is checking on everybody. How's your quarantine been? How's this whole coronavirus pandemic?
Oh my God. It's been very hard for me, just because I'm used to being on the go all the time. I'm a very hands-on mommy, so I'm used to going and volunteering at the kids' school, and then they both play 2 sports. So that's been really hard, not being so active. Mm-hmm. It's been very challenging to keep them busy because they are so active, that it was such a big change for us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was kind of like, it was one of these things where we almost got over it, right? And it's like, they started dangling the carrot in front of us, and it's like, oh shit, you guys are going to open up, and it's like, not so fast. You guys fucked up.
Yeah, pretty much. We were luckily really good with just being home, us with our family. Mm-hmm. We did a couple months without seeing anyone, and wow. I was actually surprised that the kids handled it as well as they did, because I've seen a lot of my friends where their kids were having a lot more meltdowns and tantrums, and my kids are pretty well behaved. I'm very lucky that they don't freak out too often, but I mean, with their kids, they just don't fully understand. My son's 10 and my daughter is 6, so it's kind of like they want it out. But Yeah, I was kind of looking forward, thinking, oh, that's it, we're gonna be done, yay! And nope, just kidding.
And then you're in the OC, right? So it must be kind of like it's got to be kind of different from like people in LA area or over here in the San Gabriel Valley area, right? Because like there's a lot more. How do I put it? Red hat people out there, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's been, like, I feel a lot safer out here. I'll give them that. I do feel a lot safer, but when it comes to, like, certain things, I guess. Right. Like, I could take a walk around my neighborhood here and feel fine, even though I'm carrying my mace and pepper spray with me at all times. But over in, like, LA area, I could never do that without being, like, catcalled or harassed, you know? And over here, I don't have that same experience. So that's a huge, like, one of the reasons why I love this area is that you don't get harassed as a woman, like, over there. And, but you still deal with people who will make comments or make you feel really uncomfortable when you're shopping in the store and staring at you because what is this Hispanic girl doing in the store, you know? Right. So I do get that a lot more often here than I did in LA County because everyone's Hispanic over there. So I guess, but I do get like followed more in stores here compared to over there.
I was gonna say, so I guess we won't start handing you a red hat quite yet then.
No, I'm good.
All right, so I want to give you a quick rundown. You know, as with every episode, I want to give people a glimpse of who you are. So we'll do that with a quick history and backstory. We'll move on to the meat of the conversation, which is your experience with abuse. We'll talk about how that affected your mental health. And, you know, we'll provide some resources, maybe some things that help you overcome that trauma and help you cope with things. And then we'll hear from social media on the topic. And then we'll close out by plugging your home-based business. So how's that sound?
Sounds good.
Good. So, all right. So history and backstory. Nothing too heavy yet, but let's, you know, just hear a little bit about you. I remember you, I think you were like in an English class with me in senior year of high school, right? You partially grew up in El Monte?
No, actually, I never grew up in El Monte. I just went to school there. I grew up in Azusa, California, and I went to school there all the way, finished till 10th grade, and then when I was about 15, we moved to La Puente, but it's like right there off Valley, like right off the freeway, so it's super close to Mountain View. And my mom did not want me going to Bassick because she said of all the cholas and everything, and she was nervous that I was gonna, I don't know, completely change and turn into like a gangbanger, I guess. I don't know.
Did she not know Mountain View was like the same thing?
It actually wasn't that bad. It really, I don't know, I guess maybe it's the girls that I connected with right away. I didn't have that experience of it being like fighting, because I did get in trouble quite a bit at my previous school for fighting, so I was kind of like over it. I actually was in cheerleading and choir over there at Gladstone, and I just wanted to change. I think there was just so much going on in my life that I was like, man, forget this, I'll just switch schools. Because my mom was fine with me going to Gladstone and driving over there and everything, but I got tired of it and I just wanted to change, so that's why I decided for Mountain View. I ended up going there for 11th and 12th grade.
How did you enjoy that experience at Mountain View? You know, a lot of people that I've interviewed actually went to Mountain View. You know, it's a lot of friends and family, and everybody kind of talks about, you know, growing up in El Monte and how that you know, shaped us into who we are. But you got a taste of it by going to Mountain View. So how do you think that kind of that environment kind of affected you as opposed to, you know, something like growing up in Azusa?
It is completely different. It is. I grew up more around people who we didn't even know they spoke Spanish until they were like out of high school for the most part. Like, it was a lot more white area, I guess you could say. Or maybe I just wasn't around people enough. I don't know. It's just a lot of people seem to be more ashamed of it back then, or they were told that they don't speak Spanish and that's the way it is, you know? And then in El Monte, I guess I was sort of used to it. It wasn't too hard of an adjustment because I had a lot of family that lived over there. I would always visit on the weekends and stuff, even though I didn't like technically grow up there. I did visit often, so it wasn't like culture shock for me. It wasn't hard for me to adjust. It was actually, I think, what I needed at the time. coming from a school where, you know, you're kind of one of the popular kids, there's a lot more pressure. And I was having a hard time dealing with life in general at that time. So for me, I needed the adjustment of being, like, stepping back from kind of like that spotlight of everyone knew you since you were little, and you kind of have to go with that, you know?
Right.
That, the way they see you forever.
Right.
So for me, it was nice to, like, not have that spotlight on me, kind of just be left alone. I needed that.
It's kind of like a little reset button, huh?
For sure. Like, you know, so many people make it such a big deal to change schools, and it's like you can just reinvent yourself. And I don't know, I liked it. I liked being left alone at that time. I needed it.
Right, and it's kind of funny you mentioned, you know, like, had a little bit of a spotlight on you before, because I don't know how you would describe yourself, but I mean, I think you were kind of, to me, you seemed kind of quiet, right? You were in choir, and I don't know, I don't think you were much of a party animal or anything like that, right?
No, well,
okay.
A little bit, but not really. Like, I didn't go out all the time, but I mean, like, I did have fun, and I enjoyed my high school years. Like, I don't regret it at all, and I think I was a good girl too, so I guess I don't have any regrets there. But I enjoyed high school, and I was glad when it was over. Yeah. That's it.
For sure. And I don't remember talking to you too much in high school. I think we got to know each other a little better afterwards in the old MySpace days, right? That was when everybody got to know each other.
In high school, for sure. I think it was just because of my experiences before. You know, it's hard being a female in high school. You get a lot of catty girls, and I think for me, I was just like, man, I learned my lesson at my other school. Kind of just keep to yourself, you know.
So then, what did you do? Like, you know, just briefly, what did you do after that? Up until now, you know, what did you do college, or, you know, did you move on to like?
Yeah, so I attended Mount Sac, and I worked at on campus. And after that, I went to Maranello's. I got my license in esthetician. And I was working off and on 1 or 2 jobs at a time. And yeah, then kind of got, I had my son at 24. And it's kind of just been mommy life since then. I've had little jobs here and there. And
nice. All right. So we're going to, you know, I want to switch gears and definitely change the tone a bit. So I want to start to dig deep, right? And I don't want to interrupt or ask too many questions here. You know, like I mentioned to you offline, you know, I usually have a whole list of questions for guests, but I kind of just want to give you like an open platform for you to share.
Okay.
From what you shared with me, you know, your story kind of reads like a movie, you know, like all the different plot twists. I'm like, dang, this is crazy. I think I told you, I'm like, after this podcast, we're going to write your screenplay.
I don't think so, and I think maybe for me, I don't see it that way because I've heard so many other female stories where they're way worse than mine.
I see.
And I don't know, I just don't see it that way. I just feel like it's just something that happened, and I'm still overcoming it. So.
All right, so just to get into it, and you know, like I'm gonna go ahead and just, you know, caution ahead of time. You know, share as much as you feel comfortable with, or don't share. You know. But I think any little bit's going to help whoever's listening. And if somebody needs the help, you know, we're going to provide those resources later. But what kind of abuse would you say you've survived in general? And, you know, who was involved and how often?
Okay. Well, I would definitely say it's been sexual, physical, mental, emotional abuse. As for who, the main person that I say would affected me was a cousin of mine growing up, and that was from the sexual abuse. And I had more than one person do things to me as a child, but I think him doing things to me affected me more just because it was a longer period of my life.
Right.
And the fact that he never took accountability for it. The other person that did a lot of things to me growing up, she actually did and apologized years later. As for like the physical abuse, I would say, well, my mom was pretty physical abusive, and her sister actually was too. So that was kind of hard growing up around all of that, seeing that. And then for emotional, I would definitely say my dad was He played a lot of like head games with us growing up, and now looking back at it as an adult, I think, man, how could you tell a child something like that? Like, he would say he was dying of cancer to get pity, and then he wouldn't be dying.
Right.
So he would use that all the time just to manipulate our feelings and to get us to feel sorry for him not showing up, or it was nuts.
I can imagine that'd be like a roller coaster. I mean, to tell your kids, like, hey, guess what? I'm dying of cancer or whatever. Or I mean,
yeah,
that's kind of nuts.
He was a drug addict for a big portion of my life, and an alcoholic. And it's crazy looking back on it, because then, of course, being a child who's 7, 8, 9 years old, hearing this, you're devastated, because you're like, how much time do I have with this person? And he would disappear for like a year or so after that. So of course I would cry and cry and cry, and I would tell my mom, like, where is he? Like, why hasn't anybody told us what's going on? And she would kind of always be like, yeah, because she had already heard it for so many years that she was desensitized to all of it from him. But for me, a child, I took it really hard, and it was a lot of mental games that he would play with. Oh, I witnessed my sister die, to come to find out that he never even had a sister. Like, he would just play all these mind games with me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what that would be like, but I mean, just to think, getting your mindset from like, oh shit, I think, I haven't heard from him in so long, he might be dead, and then, he just kind of resurfaces out of nowhere. That must be like such an adjustment to make mentally,
Yeah, especially when you, as a child, you have no way of getting in contact with him. And my mom didn't care. She was kind of over it already. And for me, like, having no power over the situation, worrying like crazy, and it takes an effect on someone, not just like at home, but even at school. You can't focus, like, there's that constant sadness that a child should not have to deal with at all. Like, no one should, but let alone a child,
Right. So, you talk about childhood. Let's start from your earliest memory of, like, trauma or abuse, and move on from there. What would you say is, like, one of your earliest memories?
Well, I did have a lot of, like, abuse in the home with my parents fighting constantly, so it was a lot of walking on eggshells a lot, because my dad was a drug addict. Like, you never knew what was going to set him off. I mean, I ended up finding out later on that I was his real child and my older brother and sister weren't, but we didn't find that out until after my parents split up. So I didn't deal with a lot of the same physical abuse that they did from him. I was actually really sheltered when it came from him. Like, he wouldn't hurt me physically or my younger sister. It was them two that dealt with a lot of that. And seeing that abuse at a young age, you're just terrified all the time, like, wondering what's going to set him off, But as for sexual abuse, that started when I was about 6 years old. And I remember I was visiting at the cousin's house, and our parents were all in the living room, and we had, like, built this little fort. And I still remember that it started with him, like, we were playing, like, store, I believe. And it started with him, like, touching my leg. And instantly I remember feeling very uncomfortable and kind of like, whoa, what's that? Because it was a different kind of touch that I hadn't felt before. And it was, like, more like a caress, and it felt very uncomfortable for me. And I remember, like, moving back and being like, what's going on, And I remember him, like, it's really weird, but I always say that he kind of, like, he knew what he was doing. Like, he was only a couple years older than me, and he was really good already with manipulation, because I remember he would be really nice and sweet. I felt like he already knew what he was doing. And I remember him taking me into one of the rooms and touching me all over, and me just feeling like, I gotta get out of here. I remember stuff like this went on for such a long time, and it was always like, he would tell me, like, oh, you can't say anything, and he would still be so nice to me that I would be like, is this wrong? Like, because he wasn't being a jerk or being mean, and since it started with just the touching, I guess I didn't realize that it was so wrong. And even when I would try to stop it as I got older and as it got more aggressive, it was the threat of, okay, well, if you don't do it, I'm going to go to your sister. and she was like 3 years younger than me. So it was like, fuck, I have to do it.
Right.
Like, what am I supposed to do? Because I didn't want her to be touched.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and you know, you mentioned it got more aggressive. I mean, did it move on from just like simple like caressing, touching to like other stuff? I mean, what?
Yes, it did, and kind of hard because I haven't even like told a lot of my family.
Right.
For most of them, they think it was just touching, and I don't think that people understand that just touching isn't just touching. It's a huge violation, you know. Like it takes a lot. It changes everything. It's changed completely, even now as an adult, the way I deal with my children. It's had a huge effect even on the relationship that I currently have. Well, not currently, but did with my son a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Because I was around that age when a lot of it happened, it does make me fearful that I would be sending the wrong message or something, or, you know, like I see him sometimes, like, he's giving me a hug, and it would make me feel so uncomfortable because it takes you back to those moments, you know.
Right.
Before I got therapy, it would feel like so uncomfortable to have this little boy kissing me or hugging me, and I would feel so guilty for having those feelings because it's not his fault. He didn't do anything to me, you know, but that's what that touching did, you know, like it messes with your head. It makes you feel so uncomfortable.
Right. So, you know what? I think I want to rephrase that now because I didn't, you know, realize that we do that sometimes unknowingly and say, was it just touching? Because it is a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'm glad you pointed that out because next time I'll be a little more cautious of that because it's not just, you know, that kind of disqualifies the whole impact of it. But
it does. It's kind of like, oh, well, if they didn't force you down and rape you and penetrate your body, then it isn't that bad, you know? And it is because just because somebody, you know, everyone's definition of like rape is kind of a little bit different, or the way they envision it actually is a lot different for some people.
Right.
Because I've had guys tell me, well, if I was being held captive and a guy wanted to rape me as a female, I would just let him do it and get it over with. It's not a big deal. Wow. And I wanted to slap this guy because I'm like, are you serious? Have you ever been raped? Have you ever been forced to do something sexually with somebody? Do you not understand that it's not just, oh, just let them have sex with you, just get it over with. It's not something that simple. And I told him, okay, so if a guy came in, because this is when I was working at Walmart, I was like, if a guy came into the store and told you to get down and suck his, you know, are you going to be like, okay, then he'll leave, it's fine. I was like, no, you're not going to be cool with that. I'm like, but you expect a woman to just like, oh, just give it up real quick and he'll be done. I thought that was insane because I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like,
yeah, that's disgusting. Yeah. I mean,
exactly.
So, getting back to your story, I mean, I guess to rephrase the question, did it progress from, you know, touching and caressing to anything else?
Yes, it was more than just touching and caressing. It was. And, of course, it took a while to get there. But mind you, a lot of this stopped around 12 years old. So this was a long time, about 6-7 years that this went on.
Right.
And it only stopped because his family moved out of the state. So I feel like, you know, even then I had never told anybody it was going on. It wasn't until I was, I think like a year later, I finally told one of my friends, and she was going through some stuff, and I remember telling her, you know, oh, you think your life is so bad? Like, whoopsie-doo, your parents are getting split up. And I was like, you know, I confided in her about what had happened to me. And I remember her crying, and I was kind of like, why are you crying, you know? Like, I didn't understand how somebody else could be crying when it happened to me, you know? Yeah, and from then on, I think I didn't really talk about it with anyone until I was in high school. I remember, I think I was a freshman, and I remember confiding in my boyfriend at the time, and his response was, wow, I wish you didn't tell me that. Wow. You shouldn't tell people that. And it made me feel so disgusting, and so like, man, should I have not said anything? Is that something you don't confide in people? Like, you don't let them see that of you? And it stood like that for a couple more years where I wouldn't tell anyone anything. And then I remember, you know, me being in choir over at Mountain View, I got really close to like Gina and Jenny and all them. And I remember confiding in Gina one time, and she broke down sobbing, and I was like, I couldn't believe somebody was crying like that for me, because I guess I was so used to the abuse that I didn't see it was so, like, it wasn't normal,
right?
You know? And I remember her just crying for me, and I was like, why are you crying, you know? And she told me, like, I'm so sorry you went through that, like, I can't believe your mom didn't help you, you know?
Right.
And, yeah, like, other than that, I think that's when I kind of saw, like, okay, maybe this really isn't normal. Like, maybe I should really go see what's out there. And I remember before I went to Mountain View, I had tried getting help. And I went into the school office at Gladstone, and I remember I told them, like, I just didn't want to live anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. And they ended up getting me to go see a counselor. And, I told them kind of, like, I tried telling them what was going on. I think she knew there was more going on, but I just couldn't get it all out. And she tried bringing my mom in for a session, and my mom got so mad. She walked out, and she said we were never going back. She got, I guess, embarrassed that I was telling family secrets, and she never took me back. And I don't know, that just had a really big effect on the way I saw it. Like, there was something wrong with me, that I shouldn't be speaking about it. You know, you carry a lot of shame as it is, but when somebody, like, kind of just tells you to shut up, so you don't talk about stuff like that, you kind of, it's a lot harder to speak up and to tell your truth when you have people around you that making you more shameful.
Definitely. That counseling session, was that, like, the first time you said anything to, like, you know, your mom or anybody, like, anybody in your family?
So I had told, that was the first adult that I had ever told, but my mom at that point still didn't know it had happened. It wasn't until after I graduated high school. I remember I was about 18, and it was like the summer after high school, and I remember I sat her down, and I had told her that I needed to tell her something. And I told her, you know, that so-and-so had been doing stuff to me since I was little. And at this time, I had just found out that he had been doing stuff to my sister, too, my younger sister. So that was my main reason for telling her, because my sister was only, like, 15 at the time. And I was tired of carrying that weight on me by myself, you know? So I remember telling her, and she was kind of like, okay. And then when I told her about my sister, she started crying, and she was just like, no, my Christina, you know? And I just felt like, where was that emotion for me, you know? We didn't have a close relationship growing up, and I felt like it was always because I usually, when I was smaller, I chose my dad all the time over her. And I think that my mom, growing up the way she did, she had a big detachment from me because of that. And yeah, like, I told her, and it was kind of like, okay, well, she's like, you can't say anything though. And I said, why? And she said, because if his mom knew, she would probably die of a heart attack. So it was kind of like, okay, like, I tell you this deep, dark secret, and you just tell me that I can't tell anyone. Because of the way it's going to affect his family. And it was such a shitty feeling at that time that she was telling me my voice didn't matter, that I didn't matter. And it was like one more hit that I just wasn't important.
And at that point, it's like she's asking you to, you know, protect the person that was harming you.
Yes.
Right?
And see, that's the thing that happens a lot of times in families. It's always like, especially I've noticed, well, in my family, especially because he isn't the only one that's done this. There's been a lot of men that have been accused of it throughout the years in my family. And I don't know how it works for a lot of other families, but I have seen it in a few of my friends, where the children are told, the women, the females are told to stay quiet, and the men go around like nothing happened, and yet we're the ones that carry the shame, kind of like, well, you shouldn't have gotten caught, like, that's your fault kind of thing, you know, like, even at 6 years old, well, maybe you shouldn't have been wearing those shorts, you know, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, how is that fair? Like, we're still carrying the shame and not getting help as adults because we're told you just don't talk about that.
Right.
And then the men go on and make other victims throughout their lifetime, just like this person did. He had other people besides me and continued it into his adulthood doing this stuff, you know? And it wasn't just, some people say like, oh, when we were little, I had a cousin that was touchy, but now he's normal, and it's not that. It's someone who was already a monster at 9-10 years old doing this until his adulthood. He, from what I know, he's done it to other people too in my family. And it sucks that all these years, people have known about it and they don't speak up for us. And it really, that's hard to not feel like even your family backs you on it. And I've had a few of my friends where their family turns their backs on them for standing up for themselves.
Wow. And so I can imagine, that would have quite the toll and effect on your mental health. As you mentioned, you had to be sent to a counselor. Like, how did that affect your mental health as a whole at the time?
Well, from, I want to say age 12 or so, I was a self-harmer. And now that I look back on it, it actually probably started a lot earlier than that. Because I remember when I would be really upset or something, instead of like going crazy on everyone else, I would pinch myself until I bled. Or I would pull my hair out. And that's not normal for like a 9-10-year-old kid to be doing that,
Right.
But people just saw it as like, oh, she's crazy, like she's just throwing a tantrum, And I even had people recently. I had a distant cousin who told me, oh yeah, my mom was talking about you. She said that you used to throw tantrums when you were little, and you would just cry all the time. And I told her, well, you know what? In my head, I was like, maybe it's time that they know. And I told her, well, maybe if you were sexually abused for so many years and you tried to seeking out and you were constantly told to shut up, maybe you would have been crying a lot too, or you would have acted out. And she kind of got like, oh my God. And I told her, yeah, so instead of making fun of the kid that throws a tantrum, try to find out why they're throwing the tantrum.
Right. Yeah.
You see somebody do such a drastic change. Like, I even look at pictures from the age of like 5 to 9, and you see such a huge difference even in my face. Like, I don't know if you saw the post that I did a couple months back of the before and like during or after the sexual abuse started. There's a huge difference in even my school pictures. You see this happy, bubbly 5-year-old, and then at like 9 years old, you see this miserable child that won't even look at the camera.
Wow.
Like my head's just down in all the pictures. Like, it's just so sad that my parents were so consumed with their own lives that they didn't even care to see that their children were hurting so much.
So, I mean, you felt it early, right? I mean, you just felt like you were carrying it. It was like a weight on your shoulders.
It was heavy until like I started getting therapy a little over a year ago, where it was like consistent once a week, And it was time. I was already at the point where I had a plan. An exit plan. I was done with life. I was so tired, and I know that this sounds so selfish,
Well, I mean, just recently having dealt with a suicide in a family within the last year, I don't want to say selfish, but it's one of those things you can't understand, so I mean,
yeah, like I feel like no one can understand really what it feels like to want to take your own life until you're in that position yourself. And I know a lot of people tell me like, oh, how can you be so selfish to leave your kids? And in those moments, you're not thinking about anyone. You're just thinking about getting rid of the pain. And I had gotten to the point where I was just like, man, my life has been nothing but pain. Like, no one will help me, Right. And, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional thinking about the way I felt.
As expected, yeah.
Because I don't feel that way now, but it's just like, I can't believe I was just in so much like turmoil, and I felt so alone. And I got to the point where I woke up one day and I was like, man, I already have a plan. Like, by so and so date, if nothing's changed, that's it. I'm done. I'm checking out. And I started telling my partner, like, here are the emergency numbers because my daughter has epilepsy, and I was kind of like, man, I'm worried about, he's not going to know where any of her doctor stuff is, nothing. So I kind of got like an envelope ready for him. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, I felt like he knew something was wrong,
Right.
but I just couldn't get the courage because of all the years of everything. I felt like, who's going to listen to me? And I woke up one morning and I just decided, you know what? I can't do this. I can't leave my kids. Like, who's going to protect them then? And I started thinking, like, man, like, I have to be able to get help somehow. So I started looking through my insurance, and I ended up going and making a regular doctor's appointment. And I remember I went in and the doctor just looked at me like, whoa, what's wrong with you? Because she could just see from my face, like, I was just miserable. I was so unhappy. And I just told her, you know, I need to go see a therapist or something. Like, I don't feel good. And then she told me she was going to give me some antidepressants, which I've tried throughout the years, a few different ones, but none of them ever worked for me. They always, like, made me either more aggressive or more depressed. And I just felt like I don't want to keep trying these pills. I want to feel better. I don't want something to, like, kind of, like, mask the pain. I want it to go away.
Right.
So I told her, you know, I really would like to see a therapist and really get through all of the pain. I want it to be gone. So they ended up setting me up with somebody pretty quickly. They had me call a number from my insurance card, which was like the behavioral center of Orange County. And within a couple of days, they were calling me to make sure that I had set up an appointment, which it felt good to feel like somebody cared enough to keep checking up on me to make sure that I had gotten that appointment. I got the appointment, and I tell you, man, it was something that changed me completely. Like, within this, it's been like a year and a half, and I just feel so different inside. I finally feel like there is a complete other side of the world that I haven't even experienced, you know? I lived in such pain, and I tell people, like, man, I've cried enough tears for a lifetime. Like, now it's just time for me to be happy. Like, there's no need to be feeling so horrible when I had such a shitty childhood. Now's the time to enjoy life.
Right. And I think, you know, in your case, and I'm kind of generalizing here, but I think, you know, in Hispanic households, you know, there's such a stigma around these things, right? Where...
And I was going to say that, but I didn't know if I wanted to put it out there as a Hispanic household, but from my experience, that's definitely how it is. And especially a lot of the girls that I've spoken to that are Hispanic, they kind of feel the same way that I do in that sense, because you're kind of just told, like, oh, that's how the men are, you know? And, you know, a lot of them marry young, and, like, I have cousins that were married, like, well, not married, but had children, like, at 14, you know? Like, it's just like, oh, well, they got pregnant, now they're going to be with them forever kind of thing, you know? And it's just like, you're just kind of sent off, and there's not that support system that we need to kind of tell women it's okay to leave. Even in relationships, you know, like, we don't stand behind our women, and we need our men, the good ones, to stand up for us and to let us know that it's okay, because we need that support now. Times have changed so much to where, like, even like that Me Too movement, you know, like, it's made it more possible for women to come forward, but the thing that sucks with that is also the women of, like, the false accusers, you know, like, there's those girls out there that are the false accusers that say stuff happened that never did, and they take away a lot from us. They don't realize that that selfish act doesn't just affect them or the guy that they're accusing of. It affects every survivor out there, because it makes it so much harder to come forward because you're questioned. When it shouldn't be something that you're questioned about, it should be like, okay, let's handle this. How can we help you? How can we get you help? But instead you have somebody like, well, I don't know, I heard back then that so-and-so accused so-and-so, and now we don't know who can believe you. It's a really crappy position to be put in when somebody doesn't believe you. And that's something that angers me, because I had this situation happen not too long ago where one of my nephew's friends, they're 18, 19 years old, she was with this boy for I don't know how long, and he says that they never had sex, ever. And she's going around telling people that he raped her now. And it's like, that, I don't think she understands what she's doing to this young boy. If it didn't happen, stop saying it happened, because you're affecting so many more people than you even realize for attention, really? It's disgusting to me, and she needs mental help, or whoever does a false accusation needs some mental help real quick.
Did you ever get, like, accused of, like, lying or, like, maybe exaggerating or anything like that?
Speaking of that, okay, so around, I want to say, like, 9 or 10, I did try to tell my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my mom getting very upset and spanking me after.
Wow.
And now she denies it. She says that she doesn't remember that happening, that never happened. But I don't know if it was that she was so caught up in her life that she's just in denial about a lot of it.
Mm.
But I remember after getting my ass beat by her, I was like, why? I can't tell you anything. Like, our relationship was just so damaged from so early on that I never felt like she was my mom until more recently. Now that she's older, and I don't know if it's the old age or her feeling guilt for a lot of it, and especially now that a lot of it has come to light, because I wasn't the only victim of sexual abuse in my family, and not just my little sister with the cousin, but my older sister. Later on, as I got older, this cousin was going to come stay with us, and I remember I told my mom, you know, he was there one night and he kept trying to talk to me, and he was like, I want to say 19, 20 at the time, and I was about, no, maybe he was a little older. He was probably like 21 or 22, because I had to have been already like 18 at the time.
Okay.
And I remember he was going to move in with us, and I told my mom, he can't move in with us. Like, how are you already know at this time, you know, what he had been doing when we were younger. I don't want him here. And she was going to let him move in. And at the time, my brother didn't know what had happened, but they were like best buddies growing up. And I slept the first night with him coming to my window and knocking at the window trying to talk to me in the middle of the night.
No. And
I remember that fear, and I was just like, I can't live like this. Like, this is just horrible. I finally got a little bit more comfortable in my skin, and he's coming to like my window at nighttime. So I remember the next night I slept with a knife under my pillow, and I actually left my door unlocked because at that point I was already like, I'm not going to do this. Like, he's not going to do this to me anymore. And in the morning after that, I told my mom what I had done, and I think it scared her because she was like, oh, she's not kidding, like something's going to end up happening. So she ended up telling my brother that he couldn't stay. And my brother was so mad, and he didn't understand. And I remember my brother taking me for a car ride to the store or something, and he was like, do you know why she doesn't want him to stay? And finally, I couldn't take it anymore, and I told him. And he was, like, in shock. He was like, how could this happen underneath my nose? Like, where have I been, you know?
Right.
And in that moment, he decided to tell me that my father had been molesting and raping my sister, my older sister. And I broke down crying because here I am trying to tell him my story, and he drops this bigger bombshell on me. My older sister Anna had been being raped and molested from the time she was a baby, actually. Wow. And mind you, I had been so close to my father, and it was a shock for me because he had never done anything to me. And maybe it's because I was his biological child that he never did, but I couldn't believe it because there was so many times throughout the years that he would tell me, oh, be careful for so-and-so because they touch girls and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, how could you be a protector of me, but yet be doing those horrific things to my sister? And it took such a toll on the way I felt because I held so much guilt because, man, growing up, I would cry because I missed him, and she would cuddle me and tell me it was okay. And it's just like, now I look back and I feel like such a horrible person that I would cry missing this person to her, and he was doing all those things to her, you know?
Right.
And I just think my sister's just such an amazing person because her main concern was always that she didn't want to hurt me. And I tell her now, like, why didn't you speak up to me? Like, why didn't you tell me, you know? And she always just says that she knew how much my dad meant to me, that she didn't want to take that away from me. And that makes me feel like, man, she's like the most amazing person that she can think of my feelings in that time, you know?
Right. And, you know kind of listening, I hear like a bit of a common theme here where it's like, whereas I'm thinking the two of you could have had, you know, maybe some sort of support with each other, kind of talking about your experiences, you know, letting it out and whatnot. Each of you were protecting somebody else by not saying anything. And that's...
Exactly. And see, the thing is, too, with her is her abuse went on for so much longer, and hers was a lot worse. It was horrific, the things that he did to her. Now that I've heard more details about it, it makes me so mad. It makes me hate him because I'm just like, you were a grown man doing these things to this little girl. And I think I feel more pain for her situation than I do my own, because I feel like I've actually started to work in therapy with a lot of the things that I went through, but it kills me with hers because I don't know how to fix it.
Right.
And I wish I could just take away all of her pain. And it makes me so angry that our parents didn't protect us, that my mom didn't. Especially when my mom was told multiple times about my sister's abuse. And she let him manipulate her, whether it was manipulation or her just being in denial or scared of what the outcome would be. She didn't go to the police like she should have. She knew about it for a long time and didn't protect her or us. And for a long time, it made me really, really angry and hateful towards her. Like, there was a period of time that I just didn't want anything to do with her because I was just so mad, which of course is understandable, you know, like, you just get so angry that those people didn't protect you and stop it when they had a feeling or they knew details, and it really puts more that you're just not important. As a female, like, that's what it tells you. You're not important. You're not valuable. Nobody listens to you. And it makes it harder to parent like that. Even in your current relationships, like, it makes it easier to get walked all over because, hey, your voice doesn't matter. You don't matter. That's all you're hearing over and over in your head, because every time you've tried to stand up for yourself, there's somebody pushing you down.
Right. And so it becomes kind of like an unspoken pattern, right? I mean, that's...
For sure, it messes with your head, and it's like it's on repeat in your head that, well, nobody listened to you here, nobody listened to you here, nobody listened to you here, you're just not that important. You can deal with this. You know, it makes your tolerance for pain in a relationship so much higher, and it's so ugly how you shouldn't have to tolerate pain in a relationship, like, and it does that. It makes your tolerance of the stuff you deal with so much higher when it's like, when you're in a relationship, you should just be so happy, and yes, everyone has their ups and downs, but it shouldn't be like a roller coaster.
Right.
And it just makes your tolerance for that so much higher, to where you think, oh, well, this is normal. I've been through worse, you know? And that's kind of how it felt.
So, I mean, again, just share what you're comfortable with, but would you say that after your experiences with, you know, all of this trauma and abuse, that in your later relationships in life that you put up with a lot and just dealt with it?
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because... Well, now it's funny to me because I hear my partner, you know, in December it'll be 15 years that we've been together, okay? And I know, a long time. And he tells me that this last year and a half has been like the worst time in our relationship. But for me, I don't feel that way. And the reason he feels that way is because with me getting therapy, it's actually made me have a voice. So now a lot of the times in our disagreements, I kind of like, no, I'm sticking to my guns. Like, this is what I want. It's not going to change, you know? And he is so like, oh, because he was so used to me just giving in so that I wouldn't fight, you know?
Right.
Or I would just be like, okay, whatever, you know, like, it is what it is, you know? Like, you'll get your way, you know?
Right.
And he says, oh, this has been like the worst time in our relationship, but I don't feel that way. I feel more empowered. And my therapist tells me, well, of course it's uncomfortable for him because now he's being forced to change, and he doesn't like that you've put up boundaries in this area, you know, like, you don't tolerate, like, just the whole dynamics of our relationship has really changed for me, because I kind of feel so much more empowered now, and not so scared to speak up for myself. Before, I felt so terrified, and it's not that, oh, he's gonna hurt me, it was just, I was always so scared that, you know, oh, you're not supposed to really speak what you feel, like, you gotta stay quiet, you know? I'm gonna say what I really feel, like, why shouldn't I? You're not going anywhere, you know? Like,
right.
But, you know, like, we've been together for so long, like, why can't I say what I really feel? Or if I think that you're doing something stupid, why can't I call you out on it, you know? So it did have a huge effect on what I tolerated in my relationship, for sure.
Right. And again, that's from that pattern. I know you mentioned a little bit earlier that, all of these experiences kind of, sometimes cause you to even second guess the affection that you shared with your son. Did you, before seeking help, did you worry that you might pass down any of this,
I did, and it's so crazy because you don't want to think that, because you just, like, I look at myself and I'm like, I could never do that to somebody else. Like, I look at myself and it's not even that I fear that I'm going to touch him. It's more like a fear, like, what if he were to become an abuser and then I'm his mother? Like, it's that fear of, like, I'm bringing another male into this world, and I'm not even trying to just put it on males, because there's plenty of female abusers out there. It's just not spoken about as much. And I know from personal experience, because I had more than one female abuser growing up as well. It's very confusing, because for a time I was even unsure about my sexuality, and to being fearful of men after that. Like, it took a big toll on the person that I was. I was terrified to even have my first sexual encounter, because it just wasn't, it was always looked at as shameful after that. Like, abuse takes so much from you. It affects you. Even now, like, some people call me paranoid with my children because I don't leave them with anyone, and I'm like, I just see it as, well, it's my job to protect them, especially now that I'm awake to the situation, like, us as parents, like, especially once you have kids, and not even that, if you have nephews and nieces or little kids that you're around, it is your job to look out for them, because they can't look out for themselves, like, they're just so little, and so many people put it off on, why didn't you speak up when you were little, or why didn't you go and talk? Who are you supposed to tell? When you're usually threatened, because I know my sister was threatened that they were going to harm somebody or beat you up if you spoke up for yourself, like, my sister was always told that he would kill my mom.
Yeesh.
So that was one of the reasons why she stood quiet for so many years, was she was scared that he would hurt my mom, and he was beating my mom all the time, so she knew it was possible. So my main reason for all of this is really to speak up, so people understand that they need to educate themselves and not always make the victim or the survivors feel shame about it. We're always worried about the comfort level of other people, because we see some people get really uncomfortable with the topic and they don't want to talk about it. But this is something we do need to talk about. Like, parents need to know that they need to discuss sexual abuse with their young children, like 1 or 2, 3 years old. As soon as they're able to communicate, you need to be able to speak to your children about good touch, bad touch. You need to be able to tell them, like, you don't go to the restroom with strangers, or, like, not everybody is a friendly face out there. And it's not to, like, leave them paranoid, but it's to protect them, because a lot of times you want them to live in this little bubble that nothing bad can ever happen. But when you put them in that, you're also putting them at risk, because then they think, oh, no one's ever going to hurt me when this person's being nice and, like, gently caressing me. Oh, they're just being nice,
Right.
And it's not that. We need to educate ourselves and educate them that it's okay to not want to hug someone. Or, we're always told, oh, before we leave the party, go and hug everyone and go kiss them and go sit on so-and-so's lap, and that's something that you need to start giving your kids a voice. If they're telling you they're uncomfortable for a reason.
Right.
If they don't want to stay somewhere, they don't want to stay for some reason. Don't think, oh, you're just trying to ruin my day, or you're being difficult. No, there's a reason. If a kid is unhappy in a situation, there is a reason. Definitely. And people need to start giving children voices, because we tend to just be like, oh man, you're being difficult, I don't want to deal with this, just shut up, just be quiet. Start letting your kid have a voice, and you'll be surprised with how much they know and how much closer they'll feel to you.
And I think,
if you just let them speak.
And I think a lot of the times too, this kind of, abuse, it starts at a very young age. So there's definitely, good reason to start educating them early. Most people that you talk to, they're like, yeah, it started when I was, like you said, six years old or 5 years old or whatever the case is. So there's definitely good reason to start, putting it out there as to what's, what the bad stuff is. I'm not a parent, but I mean, that only makes sense.
especially because it's not just something that just happens, like, usually it's not something where they just take you right away and do something. They usually groom you before, you know?
Right, yeah.
There's a grooming process with most children, and they'll tell you, like, this person was so nice to me, or after they bought me gifts, like, they were talking to me sweet, you know, like, it plays with your mind so much because you don't know who the good and bad guy are, you know? Like, that's how it feels, like, and then you feel bad for being mean or not wanting to be around this person because it is an up and down with what they do emotionally to you, you know? Like, there is a grooming process for sure, and it's something that we do need to speak to our children about, you know? And we do need to listen to them a lot better. I've heard so many people who just, like, a few of my chick friends who will get with new boyfriends and, like, leave their kids with these men, and it's like, how can you do that? Like, all because you don't want your family to help you, or you don't want somebody to do this for you, or you're too lazy to go look for daycare, or you can't afford it. Like, there's always some kind of excuse. But to me, my children's mental and physical state is so much more important than going to the store by myself, or going to get my nails done, or going to work.
Right.
Like, there's so many more options for us out there, and we have so many more resources than we did before. Our generation, and I think that's part of what it is about the women from the past, is they didn't have the support system that we do, and they didn't have the resources or the education to better themselves, to know that what's going on is not the way we need to live. And now is the time to make sure that we use all of those resources. There's so many, like, especially with the internet, come on, like, you can Google everything, you know?
Right.
Like, there's so many resources out there that you can help yourself with to get out, or to get help in so many different areas that it drives me nuts when people are just like, oh, I need my kids with so-and-so, and it's just like, how can you do that? Like,
for sure.
It just, I don't understand it at all, because me, and I don't know, maybe I am paranoid, whatever, let it, so be it then. I'd rather be paranoid than risk my children's safety by just leaving them anywhere.
Right, and in your case, I mean, it's very understandable. You know, you've been through a lot, so you don't want to, you know, ever put your kids through that.
Yeah, and I've spoken to them since they were a young age about, like, sexual abuse, and I know some people are like, oh, how do you get that in there? You just do it. As a parent, you know what your children listen to and the words to use for each child. Because I know with my son, I speak to him differently than my daughter. You know, every child is different. But you should be speaking to them individually about their body and how no people touching them in areas, you know? Like, it's just something we need to get comfortable with talking about.
Yeah, and then the kids don't have a filter, you know? So if somebody is doing stuff they're not supposed to, you're going to hear it, you know?
And you know what? And it's definitely the parent's job to talk to your kids about those things and to ask them questions, because a lot of times we tend to not ask questions because we're so busy with the phone or with our own lives that we kind of just like, yeah. Take the time. Trust me, your children will remember, and they will definitely be closer to you for it. And know, hey, mom or dad has my back. You know, my aunt, my uncle, they actually sit there and listen to me talk, not just yeah. You know, like, those are the times for them to feel close enough, because if something did happen, maybe now they're more willing to tell you about it, to stop it earlier on, and to get them help. And one thing that I would really recommend or suggest is definitely get them help. Whether you think that they were small enough that they won't remember, or trust me, they remember.
Right.
They remember, and you definitely need to get them some kind of help. And, you know, luckily, more lately, I've noticed there's not that stigma behind therapy as much anymore.
Right.
And I'm really happy about that, because I've had a lot of friends now that they know that I go to therapy. You know, they'll reach out to me or they'll private message me, and because I'm not ashamed about it. I'll tell anyone and everyone, whenever I talk to you, if I'm saying something about therapy, I don't care. If that makes you feel uncomfortable or look at me like I'm crazy, so be it. That's your issue, not mine. I'm getting help for mine. You know, so I tell people, you know, like, go to therapy. It will help you so much more than you even realize. You may think that you're not a talker or you don't have any problems. But trust me, like, you'll end up realizing there's things that happened to you in your childhood that affected you a lot more than you did, and you'll understand why you do things the way you do. Right.
And again, you know, I'm going to generalize, but that's another thing in our Hispanic community that we do not do, right? It's something that we're sort of against for whatever reason. I don't know if it's that, you know, because they didn't do it, you know, a generation or two ago. Maybe that's one of the reasons, but or that we want to tough it out. It's, we're very much about grit and, doing things on our own,
Yeah.
but it's something that we just don't go to a lot of the time, and
No.
I think we can do better, because to use kind of an analogy, we're kind of like, we're shook up, kind of like a soda can, right? Where, you have all this pressure building up, right? And if it's just sitting out there on a table, you don't know if somebody shook it up or not, but once you open it up, all this shit comes out, it just explodes. Yep. And that's the problem with, not letting things out, not talking things out, is that it builds up, right? And at some point, it's got to come out.
And you say that, and that's exactly how I feel. I described those moments before, like, really therapy this last time was, I felt like I was jumping out of my body. Like, I just was in so much pain, and that's what it felt. It felt like an explosion was about to happen. I was so angry all the time, and I didn't realize how miserable I was. Like, even with the way I looked at everything in life, like, it was always like a negative look, because I was just so unhappy with myself. And it's not even just the abuse, it's all the other, like, mental, I guess, abuse that I went through with the mind games and everything. It takes such a toll on your person, and you don't even realize it in the moment because you're just so hurt that it consumes you. And now that I look back, I'm like, man, I can't believe, like, how negative I felt, and nobody, like, shook me to tell me, like, oh, bitch, you're just this bitter old woman already. And now I feel like, man, I just feel so happy, and I feel like I can, like, don't get me wrong, I still go through moments of depression or sadness, like, that's never going to go away, like, you're still going to have those emotions, but it makes me feel so much better that I didn't try just masking it with medication, because that's so many times what the doctors want to do is just throw pills at you, like, oh, this will fix this will fix that, and it's like, a lot of times we get so many more side effects with these medications that it makes it really hard to try to get better when it's causing some kind of other issue.
And I hear about these pills all the time on the TV. They run the ad with the people running through the fucking clouds and shit, and they're like, take this pill if you're feeling sad, and then all of a sudden at the end they're doing the whole disclaimer like, this pill may cause depression, suicidal thoughts, and blah 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 blah. It's like, wait a minute. Isn't that what you're trying to get rid of in the first place? Like,
dude, no lie. I've had some of that. I swear. I tried taking Zoloft. I remember my mom tried giving me that when I was like 16, and she ended up increasing the dosage after they told her, like, oh, after like a week or two, whatever, you increase it, right? Dude, she said I looked like a freaking psycho. I looked like I wanted to murder her in her sleep. She's like, man, you just had this look like you could have killed someone. And in that moment, I felt that rage. Like, now, when you look back on certain things, especially like 10, 15 years ago, I remember hearing in the news certain people, were on antidepressants and they would go on like a killing spree or something, I kind of understand that feeling because I remember feeling that, like that anger, like I had no control over myself, and it's mainly because of those medications, like they completely change who you are, whether it be for like, the very few that it might do some good for, it really doesn't though, because those other side effects, man, they're so not worth it.
Right.
I also had one that it kept me up, like if I was on, I guess, coke or something, like I was up till like 4 or 5 in the morning cleaning my closet, and I lost like 10 pounds within like a couple days. Like, it was nonstop. I couldn't sleep. It was nuts, man. Like, I'd rather not be on anything at all than be on those things.
It probably did have coke in it. God damn.
I wouldn't doubt it, man, because now I see like the commercial for like, if you were on so and so back in the day, join this settlement, and I'm like, oh damn it.
Gotta go get paid. Go get paid, Mary. Get paid.
Yeah, man, I'm about to. Like, geez. I feel a lot better though, and I really do hope that more people, if anyone takes away anything from this, it's not to feel sorry for me or for like pity me or anything, or be upset at my parents for not protecting us, or the monster. It's to really educate themselves for the children around us. Like, look at all the babies around you and how much you love them. how would you feel if one of them was a victim of sexual abuse and you didn't protect them? You know, like, there's so many things we can do, even as an aunt and uncle, a kid that's not even around you all the time, you know, like, we really need to let them feel supported by us, because there's so many little kids that fall under the radar of so many people can help them, and they just don't, because they're scared of, oh, so-and-so's going to be mad at me if I say something. Speak up. Like, you have a voice now. Like, speak up for them, because they can. You know, report them anonymously if you have to. Like, do something, because I look back on, like, my childhood especially, and there was so many red flags, and I know that there were teachers who were scared, and I had a teacher in, like, I want to say 2nd or 3rd grade, who would keep me after school and, like, try to talk to me. Like, I know she knew something was going on, but she didn't know, and I know from then to now there's, like, a huge difference on the way that they report things.
Yeah.
But if you suspect, now there's so many places that you can get in contact with. They have, like, the 800 number that you can call, you know, like, report them. Like, who cares if you're not sure, like, 100% sure? Like, wouldn't you rather be wrong than them being attacked at home, or somebody doing stuff and then you find out later that they ended up hurting themselves because they couldn't deal with the pain because nobody protected them? That's exactly what I think of with my children. Is, man, like, I want them to know I have their back no matter what. Whether I'm not 100% or not, you better believe I'm standing behind them. I'll go and report whoever thinks that they're going to be touching my children. Like, it's going to be taken care of. Like, I'm not going to let another monster be out on the streets and hurt somebody else's kids. Like, it's not going to happen now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I think you mentioned now too how the time frame, within that short time frame, you know, things have become, especially in education, you know, have become a little more helpful for kids, because now, you know, if that teacher, let's say that teacher that you're talking about, who likely didn't report back then, and then they found out that you were, like, abused or whatever, she would have been held, you know, criminally liable, you know? So that's one of the things that has changed. You know, as a mandated reporter, you don't have to be right. You just have to have a suspicion and work in the child's best interest, you know? So, like, if you suspect something, the best thing to do right away is to call, you know, child services. Like you said, even, you know, if you're wrong, at least you did something.
Yeah. I mean, I've had to call the number before myself. Like, there's been times where, my daughter's...
I know it by heart. 1-800-540-4000.
Say it again for the people that didn't hear you.
That's 1-800-540-4000. That's DCFS.
Yes. Yes. I've had to call a couple of times with, like, children in my daughter's preschool, like, little girls that were touching themselves inappropriately in the classroom. And, you know, this is all learned behavior. Nobody just starts touching themselves on their own. Like, this is something they had to have seen somewhere. It's not something like, oh, they're just experimenting. No, they got that idea from somewhere. You just don't start grabbing yourself or grabbing other kids in their private areas unless you've been exposed to it.
Right.
And there's been kids where I've seen bruises on them that look like a grab mark or a slap mark. There is no reason for you to put your hands on a child like that. Like, that's one of my biggest fears with my kids. Like, people think because I'm quite a yeller when it comes to my kids or something, you know, but I don't hit them. It's very rare that I've ever had to see them spank my children, you know, like, it's extremely rare. And people think, like, because I've always been more of, like, an outspoken person with my friends, or because I speak up for myself, like, oh, you must hit your children. And it's like, no, actually I don't, because there's that fear that I could hurt them, you know, like, you should never hit your kids out of anger. And you have to constantly remind yourself, no matter how mad you are, your child shouldn't be scared of you.
Right.
You know, like, that's something we grew up on. Like, my mom was always so proud that she could give us a look and we'd be terrified of her, you know? Like, or I just feel like, man, like, times have changed. There's different ways of children learning now, and it doesn't have to be from physical abuse. It doesn't have to be you spanking them or hitting them with an object, like, for them to get the point. Like, now we've all seen a huge change in the way we talk to kids now, you know? Like, and it's a good change, man. Like, they're little people. And they're just so beautiful, and I wish that more people would take the time to understand that they're learning. They're little sponges and they're learning, and you just need to be more patient with them. Mm-hmm. We need more patience with our children, like, for sure. I mean, I know I do too. Everyone does, you know, but you need to catch yourself and be more aware of the way we treat them.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you decided to share your story. You know, maybe this can help someone listening. I know we want to share some resources in a bit. Before we do, I want to quickly jump into social media says. I kept it very brief this time. But I put up a poll on Instagram asking, have you or an immediate family member been a victim of abuse? And, you know, the response rate was 100% yes. You know, everybody who voted on that, you know, they've been a victim of abuse or an immediate family member, you know. And I also asked for people, you know, to give me like individual stories. I keep them anonymous, but what do you think about that? That 100% of the responders on the poll said that yes, either they or an immediate family member have been a victim of abuse.
I believe it, and to be honest, growing up, probably even now at this age, okay, let me tell you from my whole childhood till now, I would say out of every female I've ever met, maybe a handful of them have not been a victim of sexual abuse in some form.
Wow.
Maybe a handful. It could be even less than that, to be honest. Almost every female I've ever spoken to has told me something that's happened to them at one point or another in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. And it's just so sad that it was so normalized for so long that, oh, you know, it's just something you deal with growing up, you know? And that's just so ugly. Like, that women have been treated like property for so long that it's been normalized
it's
to be catcalled, to be, you know, even when you greet a woman, you know, a lot of men used to, you know, the way you greet a woman, the way you put your hand on her lower back, that needs to stop. Women not everyone is comfortable with that. The whole touchy feeling, you know, or, you know, I've dealt with guys who think it's okay to, like, slap your ass as you walk by them. That's not okay.
No.
Like, that's sexual harassment for sure. And, you're being too sensitive about it, or, oh, is it that time of the month again? You know, like, hearing those things, it makes you want to punch somebody in the face. Like, and
it's crazy because we used to say that so much, like, 10 years ago, you know? Like, that used to be, like a thing you would say to incredibly, like, you know, looking back on it now, that used to be something that you would normally say to women when, you know, if they're in a bad mood or something. It's, oh, it's the time of the month again. And everybody would have a good laugh about it, but you can't say that now, you know? And that's the change.
But now that you hear that, do you understand why, though? Because it's like, you're right there, you're saying our feelings don't matter. You're overreacting. And it's like, if I feel uncomfortable and my body is feeling violated in some way, it shouldn't be on me. That's on you. Like, you should adjust my comfort level. And, you know, not every culture hugs and kisses when they see each other or touches each other, you know, and it is a cultural difference as well, you know, but you need to learn to be okay with other people, what they accept, you know, like, I enjoy my personal space completely. I'm not a big, like, person to be all touchy-feely all the time, you know, and, you know, some people get really offended and hurt by that, but you gotta understand, that's, like, even with my son, there was a big period of time, even now I'm still learning to adjust to, you know, he needs a lot of hugs and cuddles still, you know, and I tell him, you know, there was a time, even with my daughter, where I don't feel comfortable when they kiss me, like, on my arms or my hands. I hate that feeling. So, you know, like, I have to calmly tell them, you know, like, that's not an appropriate place for a kiss, only on my cheek, you know? And, you know, sometimes they would get like, oh, okay, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not upset, I'm not mad, it's just my comfort level. Not everybody likes kisses everywhere, you know, like, I don't like it, you know, so let's keep to appropriate places where mommy likes it, on her cheeks.
Right.
You know, for some people, they're like, oh my god, that's insane, your child is just giving you a kiss, but unless you've dealt with what I dealt with, you have no place to talk.
Right.
You know, I deserve to have a comfort level just like they deserve to have a comfort level. If they tell me, Mom, I don't like when you tickle me there, okay, then I'm going to stop. You know, I'm not going to tell them, oh, get over it, you know, because that's the way the previous generations were. They would still do what they want, and that drives me insane. When you hear somebody tell you that they do not like something, you continue, that is such a violation of their body.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, like, it's, you know, you mentioned even simple things like greeting, right? Like, I used to think that, hugging somebody upon greeting them is like to me, it was such a foreign thing. I didn't like get it. I didn't like it. It's like, wait a minute, I don't even know them like that. Why am I supposed to hug them every single time I see them? I'm like, fuck that. I never felt comfortable doing that. But then when I started working as, like a bouncer, I would see it like at the clubs, at the bars all the time. I'm like, well, that's kind of like normal for people, but like you mentioned, sometimes, it's like more than that. They'll try to like put their hands where they shouldn't be, or like I remember I would work at a bar where this old man would come in and kiss the waitresses or the hostesses on the cheek, and they would hate it, and I'd be like, well, why don't you say something? Why do you just put up with it? Oh no, I'll just turn my face the other way or something like that. It's like,
because that's what we're taught. We're taught to deal with the discomfort because we're overreacting. I'm not kidding you. That is what I've been taught since I was little. Oh, go kiss your uncle goodbye. Go do this for your uncle. Go. And it's like so many times we're taught like a freaking robot, it's programmed into you at a young age that you're the one with the issue. Get over being discomfort. That's what the man wants. Uh-huh. Oh, you're going to insult your uncle if you don't give him a hug and a kiss. No. That is one thing that I tell my kids. If you don't want to hug somebody, don't hug them. Give them a high five. Like, just tell them bye from here. Mm-hmm. I don't push my children to do that because I remember how yucky that would make me feel. Right. It's a really... I think it slowly starts to get your kids to feel like they can't trust you. Because you're forcing them to do something when obviously if a kid's uncomfortable with something, hey, maybe they're just shy. Maybe they need a little time to warm up to somebody. You should give them that time.
For sure. All right, so getting back into social media says, again, these are just, I'm going to take some snippets of what people said because I want to keep their stories as private as possible, and I'm going to keep their names anonymous. But some listeners did, talk about like domestic violence, right? So a few of them I'm going to read real quick. One listener says, I once witnessed my dad choking my mom with an electrical cord. Another says, I would always wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning in fear that my dad was beating up my mom again. It just became a regular thing. I didn't understand why she kept taking him back, and I think my sleep schedule is still messed up today because of that. And then a third listener on domestic violence says, everyone I knew grew up with domestic violence at home. We just never talked about it. So what do you think about the domestic violence aspect of what the listeners are talking about?
I feel the same. I grew up with it myself. My father was a very abusive man towards my mom, and my mom got to the point where she was like that. So I remember them going at it. I remember a time that my dad broke this glass stuck over my mom's head and threw her into our glass closet. And I remember seeing the blood everywhere, like if she was dead. Like, it was horrific. And it was just something we never talked about because you just knew it was happening to other people. Like, now that I'm an adult, of course I know it's wrong, and I couldn't imagine doing that in front of my children either, like even yelling sometimes with my partner. I'm like, okay, can we talk about this later? Like they don't need to hear this, I get fearful for them just hearing us argue because I'm like, dude, it's not fair that they live with that. I remember I had anxiety at such a young age. I was so fearful. If I heard somebody yelling, I would break down crying because they don't realize, like, I didn't even speak for a long time as a child. Like, they thought that I didn't even know English growing up, and they put me in ESL because I wouldn't talk. Wow. And they thought it's because I didn't speak English, but it was because I was so terrified of all the stuff that I felt, I saw and dealt with as a child, that I refused to talk to anyone. I shut down. If you would speak to me, I would just start crying. I was terrified. And it had a lot to do with the abuse that I saw between my parents. It was chaotic, and it's so sad that so many people grow up fearing somebody raising their voice. Like, you can't even debate and get heated because then you get all scared, Like, you think right away it's going to turn to physical violence, and so many of us grew up with that, thinking that that's normal, and it messed up the way we deal with our personal relationships. I remember back in the day, when me and him would argue, that's pretty much what I was expecting and how I would accept the behavior because I was used to it. I thought that was normal.
Yeah, and they said that all their in the comments that everyone they knew grew up with domestic violence in the household. I agree with that. I grew up in Almani. Almost everybody in Almani had like some sort of story about domestic violence, and it just kind of seemed like it was just part of the household for everybody. It's kind of crazy to think about it now, you know?
And that's why I told you, it does have to start with a lot of the men being our backbone sometimes, you know? Like, we need you guys to support the women that you love in your life, and it starts with you guys treating us better and, you know, being a voice for a lot of us because we're scared or we don't have the voice yet, you know? If you see something, speak up to a woman, you know? Like, don't be scared, oh, you know, mind your business, don't get involved. Sometimes, you know what, we need that. Sometimes we need you to step in to realize, like, hey, it is wrong, you shouldn't be doing that to you, or, you know, you don't have to deal with that. There's so many other options, you know, so many women are scared to leave. I know that was my case for a while when my relationship was really bad, was I was scared of the unknown, you know, like, or just scared of leaving, of what's going to happen.
Right.
And I'm just really glad that he's grown a lot too. He's been willing to change and grow.
The other half of the listeners that discussed abuse on social media talked a little bit about sexual abuse. Now, this is only a couple comments, and you know, I can imagine too many people don't feel comfortable talking about it. Kind of some similarities here. So, one listener says, a family member that lived with us would touch me inappropriately. I knew it was wrong, but I was too scared to say anything. And then another listener says, I did say something, but I felt like the bad person. My mom got mad at me and almost like blamed me for being abused. And that's kind of it kind of ties into what you were talking about earlier.
I mean, now that I've gone through the therapy and I've heard more of like my mom's story, I definitely have more of an understanding why she kind of dealt with it the way she did. It is a generational thing, I think. That's just what she was taught. You just deal with it, you don't speak about it, and you just move on. Like, you just pretend it never happened, kind of thing. And you just get smarter on dealing with it, kind of thing, avoiding people. And some people tell me, like, oh, there's no excuse for what she did. I would never. You don't, I guess, really know until you're in that situation how you're going to deal with it. You know, I would like to say, you know, that, well, maybe I can say that I would do it differently than her, you know, but it's also a lesson learned that the way she handled it was not the right way to do it. You know, she should have gotten us help, and if not going to the police, at least getting us to get counseling and stuff. Maybe just having a person there that you can talk to objectively. It's hard with family, though. Like, a lot of times, you know, you're scared of being judged or them not believing you, so it's hard. You really put in a really crappy position, trying to worry about everybody else's feelings. Right.
What I want to do now is I want to, share some resources that you might have for people who are, victims of abuse. So when you're ready, you can read off some of those.
Okay, the resources that I have is the National Sexual Assault Hotline, which is to call the 800-656-HOPE. That's 4673 for HOPE. And then there's the Sexual Assault Hotline 203-333-2233. Domestic Violence Hotline is 203-384-9559. Then I have some 24-hour crisis hotlines. This one's in Central LA. It's 213-626-3393. One in South LA, 310-392-8381. Then West San Gabriel Valley is 626-793-3385. I also have a crime victim support line. There's a call number of 866-223-1111, and then a text, which is more convenient for a lot of people who don't really want to call. 612-612-399-9995. And then you could also find resources on online RAIN.org, and that's the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. They have a lot of support systems on there, and you can call or you can live chat with them as well.
Okay.
You can also call if you have insurance or if you even have Medi-Cal, the back of your card, they have emergency services for behavioral. So if you are seeking therapy or any of that, you can usually call from your insurance.
All right, thank you for those, Mary, and definitely thank you so much for your story. I think, like I said, it was something that's different for the podcast, but the whole idea of the podcast is to get people on here that are talking about things that I don't know about, that maybe other people don't know about, right? Like, while I grew up in a household with domestic violence, I didn't know about, a lot of the things that you talked about, and I hope that that'll help, somebody listening, or maybe they, they can, if it's not going to help them, if they've already, seeked help, then maybe they'll be able to kind of like, relate to it. You know what I'm saying? That's something that I always want, is different voices on this podcast.
Well, I just want to tell you thank you for letting me have my voice and speaking my truth. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. So last thing I want to focus on for this part of the conversation is, what would you say to like a young girl who may be going through what you went through, and what does she need to hear?
It's not your fault. There is nothing wrong with you. You did nothing to let this person think that they can take this from you. And not to worry so much about everybody else's feelings. And to ask for help, like, there's so many more resources now. And don't be so scared of what's going to happen, and just do it. Like, so many times we scare ourselves out of doing certain things. We fear the unknown, and you never know. That could be the light at the end of the tunnel for you, and really help you and change your life and everyone's around you for the better if you just speak up for yourself.
Right. All right. I'm going to take a quick breather on that one and be like, that was a lot. That was loaded. But I wanted to shift gears and talk about something different. So, yeah, originally I wanted to get you on the podcast to talk, to plug your business, right? And after hearing your story, we're like, okay, we got to throw this in there. But, you have a business that you do from home, right? What's your business called?
It's called Eileen's Jewelry.
All right. And what kind of stuff do you offer?
Originally I just started out with bracelets, but now I'm starting to add more necklaces. I have a few masks on there because of what's going on. So I do want to make it more like boutique-ish, where there's going to be other items entered in. So right now it's mainly just bracelets. So
like, how and when did you get started? Like, I know for me personally, this podcast, even my little barbecue side thing, it was a business born of quarantine, basically. Is that the case for you, or did you start it beforehand?
You know what? It is so funny because I wanted to really do this probably almost a year ago. I started thinking of doing stuff. I started making little bracelets at home for myself. But, me psyching myself in my head, I was like, oh, I can't do it. And I had a close friend of mine who had just started her lash business, Daddy Lashes. And she's based in Almani. And she kept telling me, like, oh, you can do it. And I'm like, psyching myself out. Like, maybe it's not for me, And I started seeing how wonderful she was doing. And I'm like, man, like, I guess not so much, and I don't mean this in a bad way, anyone can do it, but I mean, like, I can do it too, like, we can all do it, gotta support each other, right? So I'm like, man, I'm gonna try it. So I started making little things at home, and probably, like, I want to say January, I started making more. And I was still really iffy about it. And then in February, when I seen her, she was telling me, that she's been so busy, it's working out really well. And I had told her, man, like, I know I kind of maybe mentioned this before, but I really want to start it. And she was like, dude, get on it. Like, what's holding you back? Like, you're the only one stopping yourself, And she's like, you can do it. I know you can, And hearing her hype me up was like, man, I can do this. Finally, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to tell people. So I started telling little friends, like some of my friends and some of my family, and everyone was very encouraging about it. And it was around the time that quarantine started happening. So it was like, I want to say February is when I started really. And then, we started going on lockdown. What was it? Like the beginning of March.
Right. Yeah.
And I finally had a lot more time on my hands, So I was like, man, I should just do it now. It's either now or never. I'm never going to be this free again, I'm telling you, my kids were like nonstop. Like, I was taking a lot of classes too, so I take parenting classes and like things to work on myself. So I was busy nonstop, and so were they. So when they would get home, it was pretty much like, okay, we got to eat, go to sports, go do this, So I didn't have time before, and now with the quarantine, it was like, look, there's no excuse. You got to get on this. So I started with, building my Instagram, and it started working out for me, and I was shocked that I got such a positive response so early on because I heard people like, oh, it's going to take you a long time to build the business. Like, don't expect, too much too fast. And then, like, of course, you go a couple days sometimes with no purchases, but I mean, like, it's still going. So I'm like, wow.
Have you always been crafty like this, or has this always been like a hobby of yours, or where did you pick that up? Or when did you pick that up?
I guess I've kind of always been a little crafty. Like, not too long ago, probably within the last year, I started taking, like, even sewing classes, just stuff to keep myself busy, Being a stay-at-home mom, you tend to kind of just forget about yourself. But this year, my daughter was going into kindergarten, or she went into kindergarten this last year, and I was like, man, I really need to work on myself and do stuff for me, figure out what I like. So I started doing, messing around with little things, but I think I've always been a little crafty. It's just something now that I've had more time to, like, kind of do.
Where do you, like, get your materials and stuff?
So I've gotten stuff from, like, Walmart, Joann, Target. Like, it kind of just, it varies. It's pretty much all over. Amazon, private vendors. It's kind of been just me. That's kind of like my hobby right now is, like, looking for new materials. Oh, these beads are going to be something that sells well, or this, I'm constantly online looking for new ideas,
Yeah.
But it's everywhere. I mean, it really ranges all over because a lot of people do like from Walmart, but you'll find some pretty cool things there if you just look,
They do have, like, a pretty big, like, crafts and hobby section, right?
Yeah, they do. Especially mine, it's a super center. So, I mean, they have everything you could think of there.
And then, so since we are in quarantine, how, I don't know, because if you have, like, a frame of reference, because, you kind of started it slightly before, but how would you say that if business is being affected by that, if at all?
Honestly, I don't really think my business has been too affected. I mean, I don't know what it would have been like if quarantine never happened. I don't know if it would have been more busy or not, to be honest. I really don't know if I've had an effect on it.
Right.
I don't know. People are home right now, and what my partner always tells me is, people are home, your items aren't so expensive, but it's something like, oh, I get something that's coming in the mail soon, so I'm lucky that my items aren't completely overpriced, because then they're like, oh, it's something cool I'm getting in the mail, it's something to make you happy for a little while.
Right, yeah. It's kind of crazy, yeah, like snail mail is making us happy these days, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know, me personally, I'm waiting by the mailbox, like, that's, like, pretty much the highlight of my day, like, oh, what's coming from Amazon today, like...
Right. I think
that's pretty much everybody.
Did you get your podcast sticker?
Yes, of course I did. I think that was the first one I posted as soon as I got it.
Right. Also in the mail, just pointing it out.
Yep, and I was happy when I got that. So I was like, oh my god, I'm getting something today.
So how's the growth been for your business? I know you mentioned that you've seen, like, some interest in it, right? But have you seen growth as well as, like, more people purchasing?
I guess it's been okay. I mean, technically, I've only had the Instagram going since the beginning of May, so it hasn't been too long. It's been, what, like 2 months already? A little over 2 months?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm at about, like, 750 on followers, which is, people tell me, like, that's pretty good already, so I'm like, oh, okay. I really don't know what to base it off of because it is jewelry, But, so far, it seems like it's going okay.
Nice.
So,
would you say that the people that buy from you are mostly local, or have you like shipped anywhere further away?
I've shipped already to New Jersey. It's all been in the United States, so I've shipped to New York, Arizona, Ohio, Colorado, I believe was one, and then Chicago. Yeah. So, I mean, there's been a few different places. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. Like, that's cool, because, like, these are people that you don't know,
Yeah, see, that was the thing. I kept being told by my partner, like, oh, it's nice when your friends are buying, but how long is that going to last, And then he's like, what you really want is the strangers, the people that don't know you, to keep coming back. And I was like, yeah, I'm working on that, But it starts with people you know? So most of the, like, especially the first month was pretty much just all people I knew.
Right.
And then it was, like, people from their friends that knew either my cousin or my sister but didn't know me personally. And then they were purchasing. And then I've gotten complete strangers now where I'm like, oh my god, yes, other people like my stuff. It's amazing. And then I always hear your prices are so reasonable. You know, like it's a really good price. That's amazing. You know, because at first I was really nervous about shipping. You know, like adding that extra $3 in because I'm like, man, shipping adds up. And you know, at first a few people were like, that's like make it or break it. I'm not paying for shipping. You know, and I was like, oh man. And then now I hear people like, oh, $3, cool, that's awesome. But it's only a $3 charge if you purchase under 20. So like usually that's pretty easy to get. You know, 2 pieces and you're there already.
That's shipping. You know, for $3, that's pretty reasonable. So if you're not gonna pay $3 shipping, you're a cheap fuck. I'm just saying, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm not asking you to insult your customers. I'll do it for you. But yeah, $3 is pretty reasonable. Come on now. You know?
Yeah, that's not even the full amount of shipping. Shipping is more than that. So I'm like, okay.
So,
but, you know.
So you put in for some of the shipping out of your pocket?
Yeah, I did.
Oh. See, like, when you mentioned, like, you know, shipping to all over the U.S., it's kind of exciting. Like I said, you know, it's people you don't know. I kind of do the same thing when I look at the statistics for the podcast, you know? Because, like, at first it was like, okay, I've only got listeners in California. Then it's like, okay, I've got listeners in California and a couple other states where I know people. Then I started to see, like, all over the map, you know, so it's kind of crazy because it shows you, like, the map starts to light up in blue, right? And I see all the southern states, for whatever reason, are listening, the whole West Coast, right? And then I started to see little pieces of, like, you know, Hawaii, somebody was listening, New York. And then you start seeing the other countries, right? You know, Mexico was expected, I guess, but... You know, I saw, like, the UK and Ireland and the Philippines and Italy. I'm like, I definitely don't know anybody there. And I don't know if they understand.
Yeah, that is just so amazing.
Yeah. So, like, right now, as you and I are speaking, you know, when I post this up on Spotify or something like that, people from all over the world are listening. To me, that's nuts. You know, the power of social media. And, you know, being able to do something from home, right? And reach so many people, you know, because you've probably got people like in Europe looking at your stuff right now, like, you know, wondering how how they're going to ship it from the U.S. over there, you know?
Yeah, I've actually had quite a few people from like Brazil and other countries like my pictures where I'm like, wow, where did you even see it? Because we're not even friends. Like, but you know, of course, with the hashtag, it widens your audience so much. So, I mean, it's really amazing how the internet and how close everything is on there.
Yeah, and it's crazy. You know, I used to be so against like using more than one social media. I'm like, I'm just back in the day when it was MySpace. I'm like, I'm just on MySpace and that's it. You know, like because that was the shit. You know, that was like the best one. And then I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm just on Facebook and that's it. And just I haven't jumped on any other social media up until recently when I started the podcast, and I jumped on the Instagram and the sad and lonely Twitter or whatever. But also for the barbecue page, you know, I started up an Instagram and immediately got, you know, a lot of attention from it. And I used to be so against it, you know. I'm like, oh, this is so dumb. Instagram's just for, you know, people that are so vain and, you know, want to take 1,000 selfies and shit. But it really is a powerful tool, especially for people like yourself who are...
For business, it's been such a help. I mean, especially because there isn't a charge for it. It's been amazing because I'm moving over to Etsy soon. And it's completely different, you know, because everybody's there for the purpose of purchasing. So, of course, there's a little bit of a fee, you know. But with Instagram, it's free, so it's very convenient. And then you just answer your DMs, and everything's done for you. You know, if you have your Venmo or your Cash App, your Zelle, everything's set up already. I mean, it's so instant. So it's very convenient to do business on there.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, I'm doing the same thing, you know, Venmo or Zelle me, and we're good. What would you say is maybe, you know, some of your best-selling items?
Some of my best-selling items have been like the Sweet Angel. That one's done really well. The other ones would probably be the side piece. That one's the one with the little gold pistol. That one's done really well too. Those would probably be my top sellers.
Okay.
Because I've sold out a few times of those ones and had to repurchase. So the items for those. So yeah, I would say those are probably like my best items.
Okay. Now, this next question. So sometimes, no matter how well you do, right, you have unhappy jerks. And sometimes you have angry customers. Have you experienced, like, any sort of crazy or angry customers yet?
Not super crazy, but I had some people who the items, have came like a little damaged or something, like something out of my control, know? And I've had them upset, but it hasn't been, I haven't had to, luckily, deal with anybody too crazy yet.
Mm-hmm. Good, that's a good thing. Yeah.
Very good, yeah. I've been very lucky with my customers so far, yeah.
Good. Now, I know you mentioned moving to Etsy, right? But what's the future of your business? Is it going to remain small? Do you want to expand? Do you want to do anything big with it? What are the next steps?
Well, for Etsy, it's going to be Eileen's Jewelry Shop. So for that one, I'm hoping to expand. It's, I think it's always great when you can expand, but we're going to have to kind of see how this year plays out, just, whether I'm going to have to stay a small business for a while or what. But I would love to expand. As for how to expand, I'm not really sure yet. Maybe move on to a full-on website of my own. I don't know yet. I think I still need more clientele, and it's still early on to say, like, what my complete future will hold for it.
For sure.
But I would like to expand for sure. I mean, I guess that's any business owner's goal, to try to just get more business in.
And I'm asking here, like, in the perfect world, like, in your perfect world, what does Eileen's jewelry look like?
I guess it'd be awesome if I could eventually open up my own, like, boutique store. That'd be pretty cool. I would enjoy that. I mean, something for my own. This whole process has been me getting something for myself, because I have been a stay-at-home mom, and having my children, it's been all about them, It'd be nice to have something just for myself now.
Yeah. No, and I think that it all starts, just like you were saying, you were kind of hesitant to get started. I think it starts with that big mindset. You got to kind of, like, be a little too big for your britches, because...
Yeah, like, so many times we sell ourselves short thinking, oh, man, like, I'm just going to wait, or I can't do it, or, you got to really hype yourself up because nobody else is going to do it for you.
Right.
You have to think you're so much bigger than what you really are. I mean, that's where you only can get stuff done.
And I think that's to get even, to get bigger because, like you mentioned, there's a lot of people that are online that right, that are going to support you in what you do. I have been just fucking blown away because I'm not, like, super, like, I'm a friendly person, but I'm not, like, super, like, I'm going to get in your business and be your best friend type. I kind of like my distance. I like being a little bit of a loner sometimes, But
I don't believe that. I've seen you arrive with popcorn and hat ready for the drama. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not denying that part either, but
I'm just kidding.
Sometimes
no, you are definitely, like, a lot more have your space kind of person for sure. And I like that because to me, I'm definitely one of those where we can not talk for a while and still pick up where we left off and still be on good terms. I don't get offended if you disappear for a while. Like, I might miss you a little, and that's good. But at least we have a lot to catch up, and we do catch up.
Exactly, and that's kind of my mindset as well. And so I've been just so blown away when people support the hell out of what I'm doing. Be it this podcast or the barbecue thing. People have been so supportive. Like, people that I didn't even expect to just jump on it and be like, oh, I listen every week, or, when the barbecue thing started, like, oh, like, let me get, 5 plates or whatever. And that is, it just showed me that sometimes you just got to, like, say, fuck it and go for it. Because somebody will be there to support it, And if not, who cares? You tried something new,
Exactly. Yeah.
But
I know your food looks delicious. I can't wait to try some. I gotta make my way out there.
Or eventually, because I'm thinking big, because eventually when I get my barbecue pit on a trailer truck type of thing, I'll haul ass over there to the OC. My sister lives in the OC, make some barbecue out there.
Oh, man. Stop, you're going to make my mouth water. I'm just thinking about that good food.
For sure. Yeah, it's been pretty good. It's pretty successful so far.
That's good.
As for your business, right? Everybody has their short, like, elevator pitch, right? So if you had to give your short elevator pitch to really convince someone that you have an amazing business and you really want to sell it, right? How would you convince them? Like, come check out Eileen's jewelry.
I don't know, to be me on the spot.
Yep.
Let's see. I mean, wow. I would definitely just say that I offer a lot of pieces that are unique, and I do a lot of custom work as well. So if you don't see something that you're too crazy about yet, it can get a lot better. You just gotta tell me what you want, and I can make it for you. So, yeah.
Nice.
I'm pretty reasonable about like changing things around, you know, or making items larger or smaller to fit the person. I do men's, women's, children's items. So there you go. Check me out.
All right, I'm gonna get a custom something from you. Watch, you said men's pieces. I thought we're gonna create some magic there.
God.
Before we close out, anything else you want to add on either of the subjects that we talked about today?
Just overall, I just hope everybody takes this as you can survive. You really can, and you can be happy again. You know, like so many bad things happen, and even with like the quarantine happening, you know, it's changed so many of our routines of life. And take it easy on yourself. Don't be so hard. We put so much pressure on ourselves, you know, and be happy. Take a deep breath and start over if you need to. It'll be okay.
That's good advice. All right, so very last thing before we close out, I asked all my guests to comment on the next episode. And in the next episode, we have a girl trying to become a personal trainer, right? As a girl, you know, it's become more common now, but in the past you'll never see girls like lifting weights or anything like that, right? And how do you, as a female, how do you feel about weightlifting?
I think if a woman's gonna do that, that is so badass. Like, more power to you. I think it's awesome to have that dedication to keep your body so fit. Like, I wish I had, like, just a little bit of that. I mean, it's amazing. More power to her, and I hope she keeps with it, for sure.
Definitely. All right, again, I want to thank you so much for you know, this conversation. It's not an easy discussion. It's not a fun discussion, but it's an important one, and I think, you know, it'll make, I know it'll make a difference to someone, and I think you sharing that's definitely something that's commendable. So again, thank you very much for that. All right, so I appreciate everyone at home listening. Thank you. Fuck you and good night.
Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast, and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.